Our specific purpose is to inform our audience about why you should do your own research on conspiracy theories. Why do people tend to believe in conspiracy theories? Because some people believe that everything has a mystery to it in life. According to Strauss B, there are 7 reasons to believe in conspiracy theories, and I'll tell you guys the first reason. It is faulty wiring, then it's overindulgence in social media, political disaffection, the lack of education, and the inability to deal with bad news. A misunderstanding of law probability and ironic amusement. In our speech, each person will have arguments on why you should do your own research and facts to back that up. You may happen to believe every conspiracy theory, but listening to our speech will have you think differently. Today, Becca will talk about the Atlantis conspiracy theory, Logan will talk about the Roswell UFO incident, and Riley will cover the Bermuda Triangle, and Morgan will discuss the North Centennial Islands case. In our conclusion, I hope that we have shared very good information. First off, we'll have Riley cover the Bermuda Triangle case today.
So the first conspiracy we'll talk about is the Bermuda Triangle. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the name and have a general idea what it is, but I figured I'd clear a few things up anyways before we get deeper into things. First off, the Bermuda Triangle is not the space between the seat of your car and the middle console, where things fall never to be seen again. It's actually in the North Atlantic, connected by Miami, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. Also, sea monsters, aliens, time warps, black holes, and Atlantis are all fake news. As cool as it would be for those things to actually be responsible and exist, they're not, and we're not going to waste our time on it any further. Now let's get into the good stuff, where I'll clear up even more misconceptions and myths and introduce some theories and facts behind the triangle. I started my research finding a lot of examples of factual anomalies that did occur in the Bermuda Triangle. Christopher Columbus, according to an article by unmuseum.org by Dr. Patrick Garrett, was actually the first to record an incident in the region. Sailing through one night, he wrote that a large flame crashed into the sea. This could have been something supernatural, but was likely just a meteorite. Some examples that are more convincing than this would be the naval disasters in 1918 and in 1945, according to the same article. In 1918, the USS Cyclops and 2 smaller sister ships disappeared in the Triangle. The combined crew of these ships came out to be over 300 men, and they vanished without an SOS or any other distress call. The ships have yet to be found. A similar instance occurred in 1945 when 5 American torpedo bombers holding 14 men flying over the area mysteriously disappeared, again with no distress call. A plane sent up a few hours later in search of them disappeared the same way. To this day, there's still no trace of their remains. Since that day, another 75 aircraft and several hundred ships have been lost, about 20 boats and 4 aircraft a year, just in the Triangle. The most recent significant incident in the area, according to a New York Times article by Corey Carlton, was in 2015. A fully loaded cargo ship called El Faro was on its way from Florida to Puerto Rico when it randomly disappeared from radars. A month later, it was found on the bottom of the ocean floor with no sign of what caused the sinking or radar loss. Angela Fritz, in her Washington Post article, wrote about a team of scientists from University of Colorado that may have solved the mystery. These scientists analyzed satellite weather images from the notorious area and noticed that the hexagonal clouds would form on occasion. This is unusual because clouds almost never form straight lines. Their theory is that the hexagonal clouds act like air bombs, popping up and disappearing rapidly. They would release approximately 170 miles per hour blasts of air, which would generate 45-foot waves and winds no aircraft or ship could withstand. At this point in my research, I was completely convinced that there was definitely something out of the ordinary about the Triangle, but I kept digging and doing more research to find more information. Doing so, I came across some surprising facts against this. In a visual on maritimeatlantic.org, the Bermuda Triangle doesn't statistically have more wrecks than other dangerous waters that have frequent bad weather. Of the most dangerous shipping lanes in the world, it actually ranks number 10. And regarding aircraft or ship remains never to be found again, I learned from bermudatriangle.edu that the Gulf Stream is at its peak through this area and could easily carry away debris for hundreds of miles. The cases of these unexplainable incidents could have just simply been storms or run-ins with reefs combined with the magnetic anomalies that tend to happen here. My personal thoughts on the Bermuda Triangle after doing the research is that it's just a dangerous place to travel through. I don't believe there's anything unusual about this place. It's not super uncommon for ships to disappear. I believe conspiracy theories of the Bermuda Triangle is just a sensationalism heavily pushed by the media to sell stories. The Navy expects a few ships and aircraft to disappear every year, so when they actually do, it biasly reinforces the belief in the mystery. Now Morgan will be talking about another conspiracy theory.
Have you ever heard of a place called North Sentinel Island? Well, if you haven't, it's one of the Andaman Islands located near India, and there's a conspiracy theory that a Stone Age tribe called the Sentinelese still occupy this island today. So some people think it's deserted because of an earthquake that happened 14 years ago near the island, but others believe the Sentinelese survived and are still stationed there after living there previously for around 60,000 years. So which do you believe? According to the NASA webpage, on December 26, 2004, an earthquake struck Sumatra, Indonesia, and then this earthquake traveled a 1,600-kilometer stretch across the seafloor, lifting the floor as much as 16 feet. This then caused multiple tsunamis to form, which hit the coastlines of countries around the Bay of Bengal and the Andaman Sea. Hundreds of thousands of people died, and NASA has been capturing images of the island since the tsunami happened, and by the undisturbed appearance of the island, people believe it is deserted. But NASA reported that following the 2004 tsunami, the Indian Coast Guard flew a reconnaissance mission over the island, and according to news reports and images, men emerged from the forest and fired arrows at the helicopter, which did not attempt to land after that. However, there have been attempts made to come into contact with the Sentinelese. According to the North Sentinel Island history page, a National Geographic photographer made their way to the island in 1974, hoping to win friendship with the Sentinelese themselves. They sent them gifts in the water like coconuts, but the tribe buried them in the sand instead. Boats continued to travel to North Sentinel Island to try and gradually win their friendship and trust by leaving them gifts, but they were unsuccessful. There's actually a story about an accidental contact with the tribe. So according to the Telegraph page, two men named Sundar Raj and Pandit Tiwari were fishing on the north shore of North Sentinel Island, and they had dropped their anchor for the night, which was just a rock tied to a rope. And they did this to keep them from drifting, but unfortunately it failed them and they drifted towards the island. There they were attacked and killed by the Sentinelese, and after the fishermen's families raised alarm, an Indian Coast Guard tried to recover their bodies using the helicopter, but was met by a hail of arrows instead. Photos were taken from the helicopter that exposed the two men actually buried in shallow graves. But despite the previous unsuccessful attempts of contact, there was one success story. The North Sentinel history page informed me that for a long time these visits met with hostility until 1991, when the first recorded friendly contact between the Sentinelese and us outsiders took place. They actually waded out into the water to retrieve the gifts of coconuts directly from the visitors, and there is actually a video to prove it online. So this is apparently the only known successful contact, and now according to the independent.co.uk news, the Indian government has actually banned all visitors from the island, and the Indian Navy has enforced a 3-mile buffer zone to keep tourists, explorers, and other meddlers away. So now that I've shared my research, I think we can all agree that the Sentinelese tribe is real and still exists to this day. But since they have learned to adapt differently than us over all these years, and since we have had so many failed attempts of contact, a quote from independent.co.uk news states that it is vital that their wish to remain uncontacted is respected. If not, the entire tribe could actually be wiped out by diseases that they have no immunity to. So don't try to go and see the Sentinelese for yourself, because you'll either get arrested or you'll get shot by an arrow. But now that we've covered and conquered the mystery of another conspiracy theory, let's hear what Logan has to say about the Roswell UFO conspiracy theory.
According to the article 1947 Roswell UFO Incident, unidentified flying object crashed and landed on a ranch northwest of Roswell, New Mexico during the first week of July 1947. Nobody knows the exact date for sure, but the speculated date is either July 2nd or 3rd. The ranch that this UFO landed on belonged to a rancher named W.W. or Mac Brazel. Brazel and one of his ranch hands, a neighbor boy by the last name of Proctor, rode out one night after a big storm to go check on the sheep herd, and that's when they discovered the debris from this unidentified flying object. According to History.com, what he found was a mess of metallic sticks held together with tape, chunks of plastic and foil reflectors, scraps of heavy, glossy, paper-like material. The Proctors told Brazel that what he found might have been remnants of an alien spaceship, as there have been a lot of unidentified flying object reports in the southwest region that summer. So Brazel, after a couple days, drove into town and reported it to his local sheriff. And the sheriff came out and had a look and didn't really know anything about it more than Brazel did, so he called up the local Roswell Army Air Force Base. The incident was reported to Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer of the 509th Bomb Group stationed there in Roswell. But soldiers at the base had never seen anything like this before, including Jesse Marcel. This is a picture of Major Marcel with some of the debris from the ship. According to 1947 Roswell UFO incident, on July 8th, the front page of the Roswell Daily Record bared the headline, RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. This just allowed speculations and media hype to flare, but the very next day the Air Force came out with a statement of their own saying that the flying saucer was just an ordinary weather balloon that had crashed. But it was clear to anyone who had seen the newspaper pictures of the wreckage that it was not an ordinary weather balloon. It is allegedly reported, but not confirmed by any source, that American authorities even came into the base and confiscated the debris and replaced it with debris from an ordinary weather balloon to hide the truth from citizens. So what really crash landed out of the sky that day? When the Air Force went out and quickly dismissed the fact that it could possibly be a UFO, that's when the media, the media took off with it and just blew it up. And that was kind of the consensus, is that it was the government was covering up a UFO landing. According to the article, Pentagon denies aliens crashed in Roswell. In 1947, the Air Force Base released the statement that it was just an ordinary weather balloon. However, in 1994, the Air Force released a new report with new intel, claiming that the UFO or weather balloon or whatever that people had before been speculating crashed in Roswell was actually a balloon that was part of a top secret military operation for the Cold War, as part of an operation called Project Mogul, where these balloons had to carry these microphones way up into the air at high altitudes to detect Soviet atomic bomb testing. Now Becca is going to talk about the Atlantis conspiracy theory.
According to ancient.eu, Atlantis was known as a city of fabulous wealth and advanced civilization. It was often thought of as a society that holds endless wisdom and can bring world peace. It disappeared, though, and no one knows why. There are many conspiracy theories to how it did disappear, though. The first one was that Atlantis was a mid-Atlantic continent that suddenly just sunk into the ocean, and most people assume that the Atlantic Ocean was only a few feet deep back then, because Ignatius Donnelly wrote so in his book. According to ancient.eu, Atlantis was known as a city of fabulous wealth and advanced civilization. It was often thought of as a society that holds endless wisdom and could actually bring world peace. And it disappeared, and no one knows why. There are many conspiracy theories about how it did disappear, though. The first one is that Atlantis was a mid-Atlantic continent that suddenly just sunk into the ocean. Most people assume that the Atlantic Ocean was only a few hundred feet deep back then because Ignatius Donnelly wrote so in his book, Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. They thought that Atlantis sunk and raised the water levels, and that's why they couldn't find Atlantis. The second theory is that Atlantis was swallowed up by the Bermuda Triangle. Charles Berlitz, who is the author of many paranormal phenomena books, based his ideas off of Donnelly and said that Atlantis was located a bit off the Bahamas and that it fell victim to the well-known Bermuda Triangle. The third theory is that Atlantis was actually Antarctica. This theory was by Charles Hapgood, who was an American professor. He believed that Antarctica was located near more temperate areas of the world and that Earth's shifting crust caused it to move down north. And the cold weather killed the advanced ancient civilization, and the whole city was buried under layers of ice. The fourth theory is that the story of Atlantis was a mythical retelling of the Black Sea flood. So this is basically exactly how it sounds, that the Black Sea flooded Atlantis, but some people actually believe that it was during the time that Noah built the ark from the Bible and that Jesus actually flooded Atlantis. The fifth theory is that Atlantis is the story of the Minoan civilization, which flourished in the Greek islands circa 2500 to 1600 BC. Some believe that Atlantis belonged to King Minos and that an earthquake made one of the nearby volcanoes erupt and caused a tsunami which completely wiped out Atlantis. And the sixth and final theory is that Atlantis didn't even exist at all, and that Plato just invented the whole thing up. This is the theory believed by most historians and scientists. This theory states that Plato, who was a philosopher and founder of the Academy in Athens, which was the first institution of higher education, just envisioned his utopia of civilization. He said that if you disobeyed the gods, that they were going to do to your city as they did to the beautiful Atlantis. And this is all according to history.com. The last theory is the most credible because there isn't any mention of Atlantis besides when Plato mentions it and others just kind of followed suit after. And also we have done a ton of mapping of the ocean floor and never found any evidence of an underwater civilization. According to National Geographic, Atlantis is just a great myth that is still being told because it allows the imagination to take advantage of the mind. And apparently it makes for a good storyline in movies and video games. There have been dozens of movies and a handful of video games made about this elusive city, some being Atlantis: The Lost Empire, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, and SpongeBob's Atlantis SquarePantis. But even with all these franchises, few, if any, scientists believe that the story of Atlantis is actually true. It's just fun to keep up the wonderment of the utopia that doesn't exist. Now, Eman will give you a recap of what you should have learned.
In conclusion, I hope that we have shared very good information with descriptive details on each conspiracy theory case. So we had 4 topics today, and we talked on the Bermuda Triangle case, the North Sentinel case, the Atlantis case, and the Roswell UFO. An unknown source says that a good conspiracy is an unprovable one. If you can prove it, it means that you must have screwed up somewhere along the line. Make sure you actually do the research to believe the theories and counter theories. Just don't believe what you hear, investigate yourself.